My name is Rachel Wilson. I'm 34 years old, and until just last month, I was the top performing sales executive at Horizon Marketing for 8 years straight. 8 years. I built that client base from nothing. I turned neglected accounts into million-dollar relationships. I mentored new hires. I even trained Jason when he first joined us. So when the VP position opened up, the one I had my heart set on, I thought it was finally my time. I was wrong. They gave it to him. The promotion, the title, the bonus, even the reserved parking spot by the front entrance. All of it. They handed him everything I had worked for. And now? They're wondering why half their clients are walking out the door. Before I dive into the details, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever been overlooked despite giving your all, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone. My journey with Horizon started 8 years ago, when I came on board as an entry-level account coordinator. I still remember the tiny cubicle in the back corner, the desktop computer that took forever to boot up, and the stack of client folders nobody else wanted. But to me, those files weren't dead ends. They were opportunities. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. By the end of year 1, I'd turned 3 of those neglected accounts into some of our highest revenue generators. In my second year, I shattered 2 quarterly sales records. Management started paying attention, and I earned my first promotion to account manager. 3 years in, I was promoted again, this time to senior account manager and given a small team of my own. But that climb wasn't easy. It came with sacrifices. I missed my sister Andrea's wedding rehearsal dinner to close a deal in another state. I canceled a long-awaited Hawaii vacation because one of our biggest clients, an automotive firm, ran into a crisis. Christmas dinners were cut short by client emergencies. My social life was reduced to the occasional happy hour. Dating became something I just didn't have the energy for. But I kept pushing forward. I believed in what I was building. At Horizon, the culture was competitive but fair, or so I thought. Everything was supposed to be merit-based. You hit your targets, you get recognized. We had performance reviews, clear metrics, goal tracking. Talent was supposed to rise. The senior leadership team had their quirks, sure, but they seemed to respect results. Marcus Reynolds, our VP of Sales, was a traditionalist, mid-50s, loved his golf metaphors and handshake deals. He appreciated my numbers, but sometimes I got the sense that my directness rubbed him the wrong way. Still, he'd been with Horizon for over 15 years and had the ear of the executive board. Allison Parker was another senior account manager, smart, strategic, and juggling a family of 4 without missing a beat. She and I would bounce ideas off each other over lunch or vent about the stress over cocktails. She was one of the few people in that office I considered a true ally. And then there was Jason Miller. Jason was 27, bright-eyed and straight out of an MBA program when he joined the team 2 years ago. Marcus introduced us in a conference room one rainy morning in April. "Rachel, this is Jason Miller. He's our new account coordinator. I want you to show him the ropes. He could learn a lot from you." It felt like a compliment at the time. I was already overwhelmed with my own workload, but I made time for him. I carved out 2 hours every day that first week just to walk him through our CRM, explain our service offerings, and help him understand the systems I'd built to manage client relationships. I showed him my color-coded spreadsheet system for tracking client activity, something that had saved me countless hours. He was green, no doubt about it, but eager. He asked good questions. He wrote everything down, and he seemed genuinely grateful. "Most people would just toss me in and hope I float," he said once. "You're actually teaching me how to swim." I smiled at that. I took him to client meetings, small ones at first, and afterward, we'd talk about what went right, what could be improved, and how to tailor conversations for each client's style. "Barbara likes bullet points and straight talk," I told him after one meeting. "But Thomas, he needs the big picture, the emotional hook, learn to read the room." Jason caught on quickly. Within 6 months, he was managing a few accounts on his own. I still checked in regularly, but he didn't need much hand-holding. Our Thursday morning strategy sessions became a ritual: coffee, a review of his accounts, troubleshooting. Occasionally, we'd end up at the bar around the corner, talking about industry trends and career goals. One night over drinks, I told him about my aspirations. "There's a new VP of Client Relations role being created," I said, cautiously hopeful. "I think it's a perfect fit for me." Jason raised his glass. It has your name written all over it. No one understands our clients like you do. That validation felt good, maybe too good, because in that moment, I opened up. I told him about my ideas for restructuring account management, how I wanted to shift from reactive support to strategic partnerships. I explained my plans for elevating client relationships beyond transactional service and building long-term value. He listened closely, asked smart follow-up questions, and nodded like he was right there with me. At the time, I thought I was sharing my vision with an ally. In hindsight, I was arming my competition. The months went on. Jason continued to grow, impressing both his clients and the higher-ups. He started referencing strategies I'd taught him in meetings, always giving me credit. As Rachel says, you have to understand the client's business, not just their pain points. And I was proud. I really was. His success felt like my success. When he landed Patterson Industries, an account we'd been chasing for months, I took him out to celebrate. The student becomes the master, I joked. But the real pinnacle was when we worked together on the Westfield Group pitch. That proposal was a monster. Weeks of late nights, pages of research, strategy decks, data visualizations. I brought the industry knowledge. Jason brought the charm and fresh perspective. We nailed it. The board approved our proposal unanimously. It was the biggest win our department had seen in years. Marcus praised us both at the next company meeting. A perfect example of teamwork and mentorship, he said. And I believed him. I believed that helping others grow didn't diminish your own light. I believed that if you kept showing up and delivering results, the recognition would follow. I believed that the VP role would be mine. I had no idea that the person I was training was the person they were grooming to replace me. The changes didn't come all at once. They were subtle at first, barely noticeable. Our Thursday strategy sessions started getting shorter. Then they became sporadic. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Jason always had a reason. Client calls, urgent meetings, last-minute travel. I didn't think much of it at first. We were both busy. But then, he stopped joining us for after-work drinks too. He said he had other plans, things to take care of. He was polite, even apologetic, but distant. I noticed other shifts too. In meetings, Jason no longer built on other people's suggestions like he used to. Instead, he came in with polished pitches, fully formed strategies, ones that bore an uncanny resemblance to ideas we had discussed together months before, ideas I had originally shared with him, and now he was presenting them like they were his own. He started having more one-on-one conversations with Marcus. I saw them at the holiday party, deep in discussion, off in the corner, their heads close together. When I walked up, their conversation pivoted to football, something neither of them had shown much interest in before. A few days later, I passed them entering a private conference room. When I asked Jason about it later, he just shrugged. Just a special project Marcus asked me to help with, nothing major. But that wasn't normal. At Horizon, special projects were announced in team meetings. Collaboration was expected. Secrecy wasn't. Then there was the wardrobe change. Gone were the ill-fitting suits from his early days. Now it was tailored jackets, sleek Italian shoes, a leather briefcase I recognized as costing more than 2 of my paychecks. His confidence changed, too. It wasn't just ambition anymore, it was edge. He spoke with more authority, more polish, more calculation. In January, the office buzzed with rumors about the VP of Client Relations position. Amelia from HR mentioned something vague about departmental restructuring to Allison, who passed it on to me during lunch. The phrasing was odd, but I still believed that my record and preparation would speak for themselves. One afternoon, I happened to walk past the executive conference room. The door was slightly ajar. I heard Jason's voice. The relationship-centered model has transformed our work with Westfield Group, he said. By addressing their broader business challenges instead of just their marketing goals, we increased their retainer by 60%. I stopped cold. That line, word for word, was from my pitch deck. The strategy, the phrasing, even the emphasis on partnership over promotion, it was all mine. And then Marcus responded. This is exactly the forward thinking we need at the executive level. My stomach twisted. That week, I got a call from Michael Thompson, the founder of Solstice Design. We'd worked together for years. During our call about his spring campaign, he mentioned something offhand. Jason had some interesting ideas when he stopped by last week, said you two were shifting strategy. I froze. Jason had visited my client, without telling me, without looping me in. That was a line you didn't cross. I hadn't given any indication of a strategy shift, and I certainly hadn't delegated Jason to speak for me. That night, I met Allison for dinner at a small place across town. I didn't want to risk being overheard. "Tell me the truth," I asked her after laying everything out. "Am I being paranoid, or is something going on with Jason?" She looked concerned but thoughtful. "It could be innocent. Maybe Marcus is grooming him for another role entirely. Remember how weird Daniel got before his creative director promotion last year?" I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think I was just overthinking it, but something still felt off. The next day, I casually brought up Michael's comment to Jason. "Hey," I said in the break room. "Michael from Solstice mentioned you stopped by last week. Anything I should know?" Jason barely looked up from stirring his coffee. "Oh, I was just in the area for another meeting. Dropped in to say hello. Nothing major. They seemed happy with the current direction." His tone was casual, almost too casual. I nodded, said nothing more, but mentally logged the inconsistency. That week, I tried to schedule a meeting with Marcus to express my interest in the VP role. His assistant, Beverly, was polite but evasive. "He's swamped with Q1 budget planning. Maybe next week." Next week never came. Meanwhile, Jason began receiving assignments that normally would have gone to someone at my level. He was suddenly being looped into cross-departmental client strategies. He was being called into rooms I used to be in. I felt the first real crack in my composure. Was I misreading things, or had my mentorship backfired? I pulled up my performance metrics just to reassure myself. My numbers were at an all-time high. Client retention was through the roof. I had brought in 3 major accounts in the past quarter alone. There was no logical reason to sideline me. But logic didn't seem to be running the show anymore. Information that used to flow freely was now tightly controlled. Decisions were being made in circles I wasn't part of, and Jason was no longer my protégé. He was a rival, maybe even a replacement. I doubled down on what I could control: performance, results, proof. I started documenting everything: client wins, campaign results, process improvements. I sent regular updates to the executive team. I made sure my name stayed visible, connected to numbers no one could ignore, because I still believed, naively, that results would prevail. Then the official announcement landed. An all-company email, subject line, Executive Opportunity, VP of Client Relations. Applications were due by Friday. Interviews the following week. It was finally happening. I stayed late every night working on my submission. I updated my resume with every metric, every achievement. I built a business plan for the role, detailed, strategic, forward-looking. I even included a slide deck with case studies from my own portfolio, showcasing the very approach I believed would reshape Horizon's future. I researched trends, competitors, client experience innovations. I practiced for every interview question I could imagine, and I bought a new navy blue suit, tailored, confident, sharp. When I walked into that interview on Wednesday at 2:00 p.m., I was ready. Marcus was at the head of the table. Diane from HR sat beside him. They barely looked up when I entered. The interview lasted 25 minutes. It had been scheduled for an hour. Marcus asked boilerplate questions. He barely reacted when I shared my ideas. When I handed him my plan, he barely glanced at it. "We're short on time," he said at one point. "You can email your follow-up thoughts to Diane." As I gathered my materials, I noticed my presentation deck still sitting on the table, untouched. I left that room knowing, deep down, that the decision had already been made. Friday afternoon arrived with the weight of 1,000 expectations. The entire sales and client relations teams gathered in the main conference room. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation. Elizabeth Carter, our CEO, made a rare appearance. She stood beside Marcus at the front of the room, both of them poised like they were about to deliver something momentous. All around me, coworkers offered silent encouragement, smiles, nods, thumbs-up gestures. I tried to stay calm, confident, hopeful. After all, hadn't I done everything right? Marcus stepped forward and opened a folder. "Thank you all for your patience during this selection process," he began. "This role will be vital in driving our client strategy forward. After careful consideration of all qualified candidates, I'm pleased to announce that Jason Miller will be taking on the position of Vice President of Client Relations." The words hit like a gut punch. The room fell silent for a split second, like the air had been sucked out. Then the applause started, scattered at first, then growing. I smiled. I clapped. I forced my body to go through the motions, but inside, everything went numb. My ears rang, my vision blurred at the edges. All I could think was, this can't be happening. Jason stepped to the front of the room, shaking hands with Marcus and Elizabeth. He turned to face us with a polished expression, humility mixed with rehearsed confidence. Thank you for this opportunity, he began. I'm excited to build on Horizon's strong client foundation and take our approach to the next level. I have a vision for integrating client feedback into our service development process that will transform how we deliver value. My stomach dropped. Those words, those exact words, were from the presentation I'd created, the vision I had shared, the same strategy that Marcus hadn't even glanced at during my interview. He had taken my voice, my ideas, my heart, and delivered them as his own. When Jason finished speaking, Marcus added one final twist of the knife. Rachel, your mentorship made this possible. You should be proud. He said it like I had trained Jason for this, like that had been my goal all along, like preparing my own replacement was some grand accomplishment. Then came the details. Jason's compensation package, a 40% salary bump, a corner office on the executive floor, reserved parking by the building entrance, a signing bonus that equaled half my annual salary. Each item felt like a slap. I kept smiling. During the congratulatory reception that followed, I shook hands, nodded through compliments, and excused myself as quickly as possible. I didn't trust my voice. I didn't trust my face. I didn't trust myself not to break. I walked to my car with slow, deliberate steps. The whole ride home, I kept it together. But the moment I closed my apartment door behind me, I collapsed. I cried until there were no tears left. I sat on the floor in my work clothes, feeling like I had been emptied out. That night, I scrolled through social media mindlessly, just trying to distract myself. That's when I found it. A photo posted by Marcus's wife, dated 3 months earlier. Jason and Marcus on a golf course. Clubs raised in celebration. The caption read, Mark says these Sunday games are work research, but it looks more like fun to me. The date matched a weekend Jason had canceled one of our review sessions, saying he had family obligations. Curious, I kept digging. More photos, more dinner parties, a basketball game, courtside seats. Jason had been quietly building a relationship with Marcus for months. I just hadn't seen it. The final confirmation came from Allison. She texted me that night after hearing something through the grapevine. Just overheard Diane from HR, her message read. Jason's been working on a leadership presentation with Marcus since December. He presented it to the executive team 2 weeks ago. So the interviews had been a farce. The decision was already made. That night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, the reality finally hit me with full force. It wasn't just that I'd lost the promotion. It was that I had never even had a real chance. I'd believed in the wrong system. I'd played the wrong game. While I poured everything into clients, Jason played politics. While I mentored him, he positioned himself. While I trusted the process, he bypassed it. 8 years of excellence, of loyalty, of sacrifice, it had meant nothing. I had armed my replacement and stepped aside while he took everything I had built. The next day, Saturday, I didn't get out of bed. I cried, slept, ignored my phone. Let the sadness and betrayal wash over me. There was no fight left. But on Sunday, something shifted. I woke up with my eyes swollen, my chest hollow. I moved around my apartment like a ghost. I looked at the framed photos on my bookshelf, me at client events, awards, team celebrations, and felt like they belonged to someone else. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, opened a notebook, and started writing. I wrote every detail of what had happened, every moment that led up to the betrayal, every red flag I ignored, every time I gave more than I got. The exercise was brutal, but it was also cleansing. By the time the sun began to set, my grief had burned away into something sharper. Anger. Not the kind that spirals out of control, but the kind that cuts through the fog. That demands action. That says, this ends now. I stared at the notebook, the ink smudged by old tears, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. If Horizon didn't value what I brought to the table, then I'd build my own table. Monday morning, I walked into Horizon Marketing like I had every other Monday for the past 8 years. Same building, same elevator ride, same familiar faces. But everything felt different now. I wasn't here for the company anymore. I was here for closure, for transition, for strategy. I dressed impeccably, wore a calm expression, and greeted everyone with practiced warmth. No one needed to know what I was planning. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang. It was Franklin Roberts from Westfield Group, our largest client, and a relationship I had personally cultivated over the past year. "Hey, Rachel," he said, his voice clipped with confusion. "I just got an email saying Jason Miller is now our point of contact, and something about your role changing." My heart dropped. "I'm sorry, Franklin. That's news to me. Let me look into it and call you back with clarification." "Please do," he said. "We signed on with Horizon because of you. No offense to Jason, but this doesn't sit right with me." After hanging up, I dug through my inbox and found the email in question, sent by Jason late Friday afternoon, likely timed to avoid scrutiny. It outlined a strategic redistribution of key accounts to support the new department structure. My name was no longer attached to Westfield, Solstice, Patterson. Almost all of my biggest accounts had been reassigned. I was left with a handful of smaller clients. The rest, handed off without a word. That's when it clicked. They thought I would just sit there, that I'd swallow the injustice, accept the demotion, and keep my head down. That I would train my successor, then quietly fade away. They didn't know me at all. I spent the rest of the day building a master spreadsheet. I listed every client I'd managed over the past 8 years, account values, length of relationships, satisfaction scores, campaign results. The numbers painted a clear picture. I wasn't just a good account manager. I was the foundation of Horizon's client revenue. That night, I reread my employment contract. My eyes scanned quickly for one thing, the non-compete clause. It was there, but it wasn't airtight. The restriction only applied to direct solicitation of clients within 6 months of departure. It didn't say anything about clients who came to me on their own. It didn't say anything about what I could do after I left, so long as I kept my hands clean while still employed. The next morning, I called Sandra, an old friend from college who was now a corporate attorney. I laid out the situation in general terms. "If you resign and clients reach out to you voluntarily," she said, "you're well within your rights. The company might bluster, but they wouldn't have a case." That was all I needed to hear. By Tuesday night, I had the first draft of a business plan. Wilson Client Strategies, a boutique consulting firm focused on relationship-driven client management, something Horizon claimed to care about, but had long forgotten how to do. I calculated my savings. If I lived carefully, I could survive 3 months without income, enough time to set up infrastructure, sign a few initial contracts, and get my bearings. I started researching everything I'd need: LLC registration, domain name, office space, branding, accounting software. I drafted service tiers, pricing models, consulting packages. I even mapped out a simple website outline. I wasn't rushing. Every step was deliberate. I wanted this to be airtight. On Wednesday, I applied for a small business loan, offering my condo as collateral. I was approved within hours. I called a graphic designer friend to start working on a logo and brand identity. I booked tours for 3 professional office spaces downtown. Nothing flashy, just functional and client-ready. And I kept showing up at Horizon every day. I smiled at Jason in meetings. I submitted reports. I coached junior staff. I offered feedback. I kept my performance pristine because I refused to let anyone say I left in bitterness or failure. By the weekend, I had registered Wilson Client Strategies as an LLC. My logo was sleek and professional. My website was built but private, ready to go live the moment I was free. I created a second email address, a dedicated phone number, and a secure drive where I stored templates, testimonials, campaign case studies, everything I had created over the years, all documented ethically, within my rights, and scrubbed of Horizon branding. I wasn't stealing anything. I was reclaiming what I had built. And with each step, I felt myself return. The anger became energy. The betrayal became clarity. The sadness became determination. On Sunday night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and rehearsed what I would say. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to burn bridges. But I wanted to leave on my terms, with dignity, professionalism, and the confidence of someone who had already built her parachute. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Elizabeth Carter, bypassing both Jason and Marcus. I wasn't going to let either of them control the narrative. She agreed to see me Thursday morning. Perfect. By Wednesday, everything was ready. My resignation letter was printed and signed. My transition plan was mapped out. My handover documentation was polished. I had organized every client file I still managed, prepared summaries, and ensured a clean handoff. On Thursday, I walked into Elizabeth's office with my head held high. She greeted me with a warm smile, probably expecting a routine update. But when I handed her the envelope and sat down, her expression changed. "Rachel," she said slowly, "what is this?" "My formal resignation," I said evenly, "effective 2 weeks from today." She looked stunned. "I'm surprised. May I ask why?" I had practiced this answer more times than I could count. "I've appreciated my time at Horizon," I began, "but it's time for me to pursue new opportunities. I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm ready for the next chapter." "Is this because of the VP decision?" she asked, her tone cautious. I smiled. "My decision goes beyond any single event. I've learned a lot here, but I'm ready to take what I've learned and apply it differently." She leaned forward, switching into retention mode. "What would it take to keep you? A salary bump? New responsibilities? You've been essential to our success. Your clients love you." "I'm honored," I said sincerely, "but my decision is final. I'll ensure a smooth transition and provide detailed documentation for every client I'm still managing." There was a long pause, then she nodded. "I respect your professionalism. Thank you for coming to me directly." "I believe transparency matters," I replied, standing to shake her hand. And with that, the countdown had officially begun. 30 minutes later, Elizabeth called Marcus and Jason into her office and asked if I wanted to be there for the conversation. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I think it's important to communicate this openly." The meeting was short and tense. Marcus barely concealed his annoyance. "We just spent weeks restructuring the department," he said, arms crossed. "This is going to be disruptive to our clients." "I understand your concern," I replied calmly. "That's why I've prepared a full transition plan. I'll make sure every client has what they need." Jason looked stunned. "I thought you were on board with the new direction. We just talked about your future here last week." "I appreciated that conversation," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But this decision reflects my long-term career goals." They didn't say much else. Marcus nodded stiffly. Jason avoided my eyes. The next day, I sat with HR for my exit interview. I kept it professional, providing feedback about workflow gaps, client communication protocols, and knowledge-sharing breakdowns. When asked directly whether the VP decision influenced my resignation, I simply said, "Every career decision is a combination of factors." I didn't mention the betrayal. I didn't mention Jason. I didn't need to. The paperwork was signed. My final day was set. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked harder than ever, not out of loyalty to Horizon, but out of loyalty to the clients who had trusted me and to the future I was about to build. I created comprehensive handover packets for each account: relationship history, campaign performance, client preferences, open issues, strategic goals. I made sure that when I walked out that door, no one could say I left a mess behind. I didn't ask for a goodbye party. I made my rounds privately, thanking the colleagues who had supported me over the years. I had real conversations, exchanged personal contact info with a few close connections, and left the rest behind. On my final day, I left at 5 p.m. sharp with one small box of personal items. No tears, no speeches. Just a quiet, purposeful walk through the lobby, a polite nod to the security guard, and the slow exhale of someone who had finally let go of a weight she'd been carrying too long. The following Monday, Wilson Client Strategies officially opened its doors. My office space was small, just 2 rooms and a shared conference room, but it was mine. The walls were bare for now, but the energy felt right. On my desk sat a framed photo of my very first client win, and above it, our mission statement: partnership, transparency, results. I spent the day finalizing operational systems, reviewing legal documents, double-checking my website, and preparing outreach templates. I didn't call a single client. I didn't need to. At 10:32 a.m., the first inquiry came in through my website's contact form. It was from Franklin at Westfield Group. "Rachel, we'd love to schedule a meeting. Things have shifted on our end, and we'd like to explore other service options." By noon, I had 2 more messages: Solstice Design and Patterson Industries. By the end of the day, I had 7 client inquiries in total, all unsolicited, all from former clients, all expressing the same concern. Service quality had dropped, and they were looking for alternatives. I scheduled consultations for each of them, offering full transparency. I never mentioned Jason. I never criticized Horizon. I didn't need to. The contrast spoke for itself. Franklin was the first to sign. "We chose Horizon because of you," he said bluntly, "and if you're not there, we're not staying." Solstice followed a day later. then Patterson. Each transition followed the same script. A client-initiated contact, expressed dissatisfaction, and asked to work with me directly. I made sure every contract was compliant with my non-solicitation clause. I let them make the first move. I simply responded, professionally and with solutions. 3 days after my launch, I got a voicemail from Jason. "Hey, Rachel, we need to talk about the client situation. Please call me back." I didn't return the call. That boundary was firm now. The next message came from Marcus. Subject line, urgent client retention discussion. The tone was tense, accusatory. Several key accounts have terminated services citing your departure. This pattern raises concerns of solicitation in violation of your separation agreement. Please contact me immediately. I forwarded the email to Sandra. "They're trying to intimidate you," she said, "but as long as you didn't initiate, they have no grounds. Keep documentation of every interaction. You're doing everything by the book." By the end of my first month, Wilson Client Strategies had signed contracts with 9 former Horizon clients, representing nearly 40% of my previous portfolio's value. And the economics were clear. Without Horizon's bloated overhead, I could offer comparable services at slightly lower rates and still increase my income. It wasn't just working, it was thriving. Then came a text from Elizabeth Carter. Just 3 words. "Becky, why did you resign?" I stared at it for a long moment, then replied simply, "Check the pipeline." The meaning was unmistakable to anyone who understood sales. The pipeline, Horizon's forecast of upcoming projects and revenue, was drying up, not because of a market shift, not because of budget cuts, but because clients were following the relationships, not the institution. Later that day, I heard from a former colleague that an emergency board meeting had been called. Jason had been asked to present a revised client retention strategy. Apparently, it had not gone well. The board, I was told, was questioning recent leadership decisions. The once rising star was suddenly under scrutiny. Meanwhile, I had hired an administrative assistant to help manage the growing workload. I was interviewing candidates for an account coordinator role. My calendar was booked with client consultations, onboarding sessions, and strategic planning meetings. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. By the start of my second month in business, Wilson Client Strategies had grown faster than I ever could have imagined. Word spread quickly. Clients who had once been tied to Horizon through corporate contracts were now reaching out directly, drawn by the promise of something more personal, more responsive, and frankly, more human. I was no longer trying to prove myself inside someone else's structure. I was building my own. Each morning, I walked into an office that reflected my values. No rigid hierarchies, no backroom deals, just real work, built on real relationships. By week 6, we had retained 70% of my former portfolio's value, and that number was still rising. I wasn't chasing clients anymore. They were coming to me, referred by others who had seen firsthand what true partnership looked like. I had hired my first account coordinator, Maya, a sharp, empathetic communicator who reminded me a little of myself when I first started. Our small team worked collaboratively with mutual respect and shared goals. We weren't trying to impress executives. We were trying to serve people. Then one morning, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I didn't recognize the voice right away. It had been a while. "Rachel, it's Elizabeth Carter." I paused, surprised. "Hi, Elizabeth. I was hoping we could meet for coffee this week," she said. "There are some things I'd like to discuss in person." I agreed to meet at a neutral cafe downtown, a quiet spot neither of us frequented, with just enough privacy. She arrived on time, dressed like always in her tailored gray suit, though her posture was softer, her voice less formal. "Thank you for making the time," she began, stirring her tea. I nodded. "Of course, what's on your mind?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Horizon has undergone a lot of changes since your departure, more than we anticipated." I said nothing, letting her continue. "There was a ripple effect after you left. Clients didn't just disengage. They left. Some of our largest accounts. We had to reevaluate everything, our leadership structure, our priorities, even how we define success." Still, I said nothing. I wanted to see where this was going. "Jason is no longer with the company," she added, "and Marcus took early retirement. The board recognized that we'd lost touch with the very thing that made Horizon strong, client relationships." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "We made a mistake, Rachel, in how your promotion was handled, in how your contributions were overlooked. It was poor judgment." I breathed in slowly. 6 months ago, those words might have broken me or given me a sliver of hope, but now they were just confirmation. I appreciate your honesty, I said. I truly do. She nodded. That brings me to why I asked to meet. The board has approved a new position, Chief Client Officer. It would come with a board seat, full authority over relationship management strategy, and substantial equity in the company. She slid a folder across the table. It's yours if you want it. I stared at the folder but didn't reach for it. It was everything I had once wanted. Everything I had once believed I needed to feel seen. But now I already had everything I needed. I'm honored, I said after a moment. Truly. But Wilson Client Strategies isn't just a business. It's a vision I've spent the last 6 months bringing to life. And I'm not sure I can fold that into a corporate structure, any corporate structure. Elizabeth gave a slow, thoughtful nod. I understand. That's why we're open to discussing a strategic partnership instead. We'd maintain your brand and independence, but Horizon would provide infrastructure, access to data, tools, resources, while your firm leads relationship strategy across select portfolios. That got my attention. It wasn't just an olive branch, it was an evolution. We agreed to have our teams explore the idea further. No commitments, just open minds. As we wrapped up the meeting, I walked out into the cool afternoon sun, thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, I was in tears on my apartment floor, devastated by betrayal. Now, I was being offered a board seat at the same company that once treated me like I didn't belong in the room. And the best part? I no longer needed their validation. The journey had changed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The heartbreak, the clarity, the risk, the rebuilding. It had all shaped me into someone stronger, someone freer, someone who had nothing to prove anymore. That night, I met Allison for dinner. We'd reconnected a month after I left Horizon. She'd since moved on, accepting a leadership role at a competing firm after witnessing firsthand how poorly my situation had been handled. Our friendship had deepened, no longer confined to professional boundaries. We shared ideas, supported each other's visions, and laughed more than we had in years. As we clinked glasses, she smiled at me. You know, she said, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's thriving on your own terms. I smiled back. I'm not trying to get revenge anymore. No, she agreed, but you sure are thriving. The following weeks were a whirlwind of possibility. My team and I kept up with the surge of new business, while also carefully considering Horizon's offer. We entered discussions cautiously, curious, not committed. I wasn't about to undo everything I'd built just for a title or a seat at a table that once pushed me aside. Instead, I approached it the same way I had built my firm, with clarity, boundaries, and purpose. As our lawyers and consultants explored partnership terms, I focused on what had brought me this far: relationships. Every client call reaffirmed the power of trust. Every strategy session, every success story reminded me that this was no accident. This was earned. Meanwhile, our firm moved into a larger suite down the hall from our original office. The space had natural light, a modern conference room, and just enough room to grow without losing our close-knit energy. The new sign read, Wilson Client Strategies, Building Real Partnerships. By our 7th month, we weren't just maintaining, we were expanding. Word of mouth brought in new industries, startups, nonprofits, even 2 Fortune 500 companies seeking a more human approach to client experience. One day, I paused during a team meeting to look around the table. Maya was presenting a creative pitch for a retail chain. Liam, our data analyst, was reviewing client engagement trends. Serena, my assistant, handed me a report detailing our newest onboarding metrics. Everyone was locked in, engaged, collaborative, sharp. It hit me then. This wasn't just a rebound. This was my future. I had built a culture where voices mattered, where credit was shared, where ideas weren't stolen, but nurtured. And the more we leaned into those values, the more clients responded. We began receiving unsolicited testimonials, some handwritten, some emailed, from clients who felt genuinely cared for. We framed a few of them and hung them in the hallway, not as trophies, but as reminders. Reminders that authenticity wins, that relationships matter, that trust built over time can't be replicated overnight. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, strangely reminiscent of the day I met Jason, my phone lit up with a new message from Elizabeth Carter. It was short. Partnership proposal draft is ready. Would love your thoughts. I sat with it for a while before replying. We were negotiating as equals now, not employee and employer, not applicant and gatekeeper. but two leaders who understood the value of what I had built and what they had lost. That evening, I walked through our quiet office after hours, admiring the framed testimonials, the soft hum of possibility. I paused by our mission statement, now expanded and proudly displayed in our front lobby. And a partnership through transparency, expertise, and commitment to client success. And below it, in gold foil on textured paper, the words that had carried me through everything. Earn trust, deliver value, lead with integrity. As I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just satisfaction, but peace. Because I hadn't just survived a betrayal. I had turned it into the foundation of something better. The healing process hadn't been linear. It never is. It came in stages, raw at first, then reflective. Grief turned to anger, anger into purpose, purpose into movement. And eventually, movement turned into meaning. 6 months earlier, I had believed that my worth depended on being seen by others. That recognition from an institution was proof of my value. But standing here now, I knew better. Success wasn't about the title they refused to give me. It was about what I chose to build when they didn't. Horizon had forced me to answer a question I hadn't dared to ask. What would I do if the safety net disappeared? The answer turned out to be, I would fly. And as painful as the process had been, I now saw it for what it was, not an ending, but a push. A necessary redirection toward the version of myself I had been too afraid to imagine. The betrayal, it had stripped away the illusions, and in its place, it left me with something real, clarity, courage, and freedom. That clarity extended to mentorship too. With my own team, I led differently. I taught skills, yes, but also context. I helped them understand not just how to do the job, but how to protect their work, their voice, and their integrity. I shared credit often, openly, without reservation. Because I understood now, lifting others doesn't diminish you. It multiplies the value of everything you've built. At our next team retreat, I stood before the group, looked into each face, and said, "This firm doesn't exist because of what happened at Horizon. It exists because we chose to create something better, and we will continue to choose that every single day." And they applauded, not because they had to, but because they believed it too. That night, I received an email from a client contact I hadn't spoken to in years. She had just joined a new company as VP of Marketing and wanted to bring Wilson Client Strategies on board. "I remember how you made us feel back then," she wrote. "I want that again for our new team." That one line reminded me why I'd chosen this path. Because people don't remember slide decks or slogans. They remember how you made them feel. The next few weeks at Wilson Client Strategies felt like watching a seed you planted finally bloom. More referrals came in, many from people I had worked with years ago, former interns who were now marketing managers, vendors turned decision makers, even competitors who admired our work from afar. Every call, every meeting reminded me that relationships built on trust don't disappear when you leave a company. They follow you. They grow with you, and when given the right environment, they flourish. Our new client portfolio now spanned industries, tech startups, healthcare networks, luxury retail, and education services. We weren't just surviving in a competitive space, we were setting the standard. Maya had taken over onboarding with ease. Liam developed a reporting system that made our insights actionable within 24 hours. And Serena had started managing speaking requests that were now coming in regularly. Conferences, webinars, industry panels. People wanted to hear how we did what we did. We decided to host our first client summit, an in-person event centered on meaningful relationship building in a digital-first world. Not only did clients RSVP quickly, but some asked to bring colleagues from other departments. We had to book a larger venue. I stood at the front of that event 2 months later, looking out at a room full of decision makers, CMOs, founders, people who had chosen us, who had left bigger firms for something better. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't nervous. I was grounded. "Thank you all for being here," I began, voice steady, "and for believing that relationships still matter. That strategy without empathy is hollow. That trust, once earned, is the most valuable currency we have." The applause was quiet, respectful, but deeply felt. I didn't need to pitch. I didn't need to prove. I was simply sharing a truth we had all felt in our own careers, that the business world doesn't need to be ruthless to be effective. It just needs to be real. After the summit, I received a text from Allison. "Now you're rewriting the rules." I smiled, because she was right. We weren't just offering consulting. We were modeling a better way to lead. Then came another message, this time from Elizabeth Carter. The Horizon partnership proposal was finalized. It was generous. Resources, back-end support, referral pipelines, shared insights, and they were willing to keep our autonomy intact. Wilson client strategies would remain independent, but with preferred vendor status and access to their client network. On paper, it was a win-win. Still, I took time to think. I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who needed a seat at their table. But I also wasn't bitter. I had healed, truly, and I now had the power to say yes, not out of desperation, but discernment. So I gathered my leadership team and laid it all out. Every clause, every benefit, every risk. We won't lose ourselves in this, I told them. That's not negotiable. They agreed. We accepted the partnership on our terms. And just like that, the company that once dismissed me was now publicly aligning with the firm I built in their shadow. That felt poetic, but more importantly, it felt right, because it meant our approach was working, and others were paying attention. 6 months after the partnership launched, I was invited to speak at a national marketing leadership conference. My keynote was titled, Relationship-Driven Strategy, Why Connection is the New Currency. The response was overwhelming. People stood in line to ask questions. My LinkedIn inbox exploded. Small businesses and Fortune 100 companies alike reached out. Message stood out. I left my corporate job today. I've been scared for years. Your story gave me the courage to start something that feels honest. Thank you. I read it 3 times, because that was the real impact. This journey, what started as heartbreak, had become a blueprint for others. Not because I had a perfect plan, but because I didn't let betrayal define me. It's strange how life gives you what you need, even when it first shows up in the form of loss. If Horizon had promoted me, I might still be there, comfortable, unchallenged, quietly unfulfilled. Instead, they broke something I thought I needed. And in the rubble, I found a truth I never would have reached otherwise. I found myself. The version of Rachel Wilson who isn't just good at her job, but fearless in her purpose. And now, when I look at my calendar, packed with client meetings, mentoring sessions, speaking engagements, I don't feel stretched thin. I feel full. Because everything I'm doing now flows from something honest. And no one can take that from me. Not anymore. 6 months after that keynote, Wilson Client Strategies was no longer just a firm. It was a movement. Clients were talking about us in boardrooms. Young professionals were referencing our approach in job interviews. And our own team, they were thriving. We'd grown from a team of 5 to a team of 12. Our office now spanned an entire floor in the building we started in. Glass walls, collaborative spaces, a client lounge that doubled as a creative hub. Every inch of it had intention. It wasn't about impressing people with sleek furniture or corporate bravado. It was about creating a space where honesty, creativity, and service could thrive. The wall behind my desk had become something of a symbol for our journey. Framed testimonials, press clippings, a photo of the very first client who trusted me enough to take the leap. And in the center, our updated mission statement printed in bold serif font. Lead with integrity, build through trust, deliver with care. One morning, as I walked past that wall, Serena handed me a handwritten note that had arrived by courier, no return address. Inside, it simply said, I thought I was climbing toward the top. Turns out I was digging a hole. Watching what you built showed me there's another way. Thank you. It wasn't signed. I had a hunch who sent it, but I didn't need confirmation. Some lessons you learn too late, others just in time. And while I had no desire for retribution, I couldn't deny the quiet satisfaction of knowing that truth always finds its way out. By our first anniversary, we had helped over 40 clients reimagine their customer relationships. We'd hosted 2 summits, launched a mentorship program for underrepresented professionals in marketing, and published a white paper that was cited across the industry. And the phone kept ringing. Not with noise, but with clarity. Clients calling not for gimmicks, but guidance. Young professionals reaching out not for a shortcut, but a model. And internally, we were evolving too. Each team member had grown in their role. We held monthly culture check-ins, where ideas flowed freely, feedback was welcomed, and no voice was ignored. At one of those meetings, Maya said something that stuck with me. This place doesn't just teach you how to do great work. It teaches you how to stay whole while doing it. I wrote that down. I still keep it in my notebook. Because she was right. We weren't just building campaigns or closing deals. We were proving that excellence and empathy can coexist, that you don't have to climb over others to rise, that sustainable success isn't a contradiction, it's a choice. One afternoon, as I was preparing to leave for a podcast interview, Serena knocked softly on my door. "Someone's here to see you," she said. "Didn't have an appointment, but she said you might remember her." Before I could ask who, the door opened, and there stood Diane from HR at Horizon. Her expression was neutral but respectful. She looked older than I remembered, but maybe that was just the weight of the last year. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," she said. "I just wanted to see it for myself." I gestured for her to come in. We sat. I offered her water, which she declined. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "This is unofficial," she said carefully. "But I wanted you to know that the board commissioned an internal review after your departure about leadership, client loss, culture issues." I raised an eyebrow. She nodded. "Your name came up, a lot. Not in blame, but in hindsight, in regret." I didn't say anything. She continued. "I was asked to extend an invitation. Horizon wants to license your training framework for client engagement. They want to bring your methods to their new team." I took the envelope. Inside was a formal request, well worded, generous compensation, full acknowledgement of authorship. I leaned back, hands folded. This wasn't vindication. This was validation. I looked at Diane and smiled, not out of triumph, but peace. "Let's have our legal teams talk," I said. She exhaled, visibly relieved. And as she left, she paused by the framed quote near the door. It read, "If they won't give you a seat at the table, build your own." She turned back to me. "You really did?" And I nodded. Yes, I did. The licensing deal with Horizon went through smoothly. It was surreal at first, seeing my own frameworks, my own language, integrated into the training modules of the company that once passed me over. But I didn't feel bitterness, just quiet assurance that I had been right all along. Not in a boastful way. In a soul-deep, calm, certainty kind of way. The strategies I had once begged leadership to notice were now being distributed company-wide, with my name on them. The money from the deal helped fund 2 new initiatives: a scholarship fund for young professionals pursuing careers in client relations, and a free monthly workshop series open to small businesses and nonprofits looking to build better customer trust without big agency resources. Because giving back was never an afterthought for me. It was a value I'd carried since day one. By year 2, Wilson Client Strategies had doubled in size again. We had clients in 4 countries. Our team represented 5 languages, 9 cities, and a wide range of lived experiences. And we were just getting started. The work didn't get easier, but it felt lighter. Because I no longer carried the weight of proving my worth to people who never intended to see it. I carried purpose, mission, impact. And that made all the difference. A few weeks after the Horizon licensing announcement, I received an unexpected call from a podcast host I admired. She ran a show called The Real Rise, featuring stories of women who overcame personal and professional setbacks to lead change in their industries. She wanted me as her next guest. "I've followed your story since the keynote," she said. "You're what this show is about, not because you were betrayed, but because of how you rebuilt." The interview aired the following month. In it, I told the whole story, not from a place of bitterness, but from reflection. I spoke about the long nights, the uncertainty, the tears I cried alone in my apartment. I talked about betrayal, but also transformation, about building something no one could take from me. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in, women and men alike sharing their own stories, of being overlooked, of feeling invisible, of choosing to walk away instead of break down. Some had just quit jobs they'd outgrown. Others were on the edge of a decision and looking for a sign. I replied to every single message, even if just with a line of encouragement, because I knew what it felt like to need someone to remind you, you're not crazy, you're not broken, and you're not alone. These days, my calendar is full, but not crowded. I leave space for creative thinking, long walks, lunches with friends, and spontaneous brainstorming sessions that don't revolve around urgency. I protect my time the way I once protected client campaigns, with intention and care. I still mentor, still write, still show up for my team in the ways I once wished someone had shown up for me. And every so often, I open that old notebook from the night it all fell apart, the one filled with tears and rage and disbelief. I keep it as a reminder. Not of what was lost, but of what was found. My voice, my values, my vision. If you're watching this because you're going through something similar, if you've just been passed over, pushed out, or betrayed by people you trusted, I want you to know something. It's not the end of your story. It might be the start of the chapter where everything changes, where you stop asking for a seat and start building the whole damn room. So tell me in the comments, what's your story? What are you building? What did they try to take from you? And what did you reclaim? And if this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. Because you never know who's one brave step away from everything changing. Thank you for spending time with me today. And remember, sometimes what feels like your worst moment is just the beginning of your best.